Hello everyone, welcome back to Manga Goblin. I'm Trix, of course, and today we're going to again do some Spelljammer content. The video that I put out before about these two races had some errors in it, and so I need to fix them, but I'll add an additional race, an additional creature as well to make up for it, basically, for my mistake. We're going to first look at the race called the Albari. The Albari are a race of magical bird-like creatures that are equally at home in wild space or the polygism. They are dedicated to chaos, which means basically, if you can imagine them, they're the ultimate trickster type thing, but they're kind of malicious in the way they trick people. You see, Albari love chaos, they love inflicting chaos, and what they'll do is they'll isolate a ship somewhere and they will warp the passengers' minds and they'll really mess with them until they're basically drained of all energy. They're not very big, they're just under or just over a meter tall. There tends to be quite a few of them. It says they're chaotic neutral. Now, when things say chaotic neutral in second and stuff like that, it means that they're just doing it to survive, basically. They feed on the chaos, they need to inflict chaos. The Albari themselves are rather small. They have like a human-like face with a beak, and they have like human hands which jut out of the wings. However, these hands are not very useful. They can do very small things, like they can bring food to their mouth, they might be able to hold a stick, but for anything more intricate than that, they'll use their claws on their legs, basically. And what they'll do is they'll find a ship somewhere, they'll latch onto it, follow it round, because Albari do need oxygen just as much as the other races. However, they can seem to avoid the need for it. For example, if they're in the polygism and they'll wait and they'll wait. Sometimes they'll wait in like an asteroid or something in this place. Sometimes they'll just hitch a ride with ships, or they'll like, say if two ships are passing each other in the polygism, they'll jump from one to another, especially if they've either been found out or they believe enough chaos has been sown on the previous vessel. The creatures themselves are kind of dull coloured, with males tending to be a bit more brighter and the females tending to be a bit darker. They're kind of like snowy coloured to ashen grey. Of course, this doesn't stop you from making whatever colours of Albari you wish. It's just that back then creatures were rather muted. So going on from that, what they'll do is, as I've said, they'll spend about 1d6 days harassing the ship. Then they'll drive them down, they'll hide themselves in like illusion based areas, and they'll make everyone paranoid to the point of insanity. After they've done that, they'll basically take what they want. Often they don't even keep these things, these trinkets that they take from people, they'll just junk them. They're very mercurial. While it says that they avoid cities, it also mentions that they do tend to have nests, which, if you imagine for creatures like this, they don't stay together for very long. Once they've mated, they'll spend a very small time with the offspring, then basically separate again. Though they tend to hang out in groups, their mating rituals are kind of weird and don't last. They've got no concept of anything besides sowing chaos. I don't know if this applies to other members of the race. They seem to tolerate them, at least because they tend to hang out in groups. There's no hierarchical structure at all that it's mentioned. The Albari, if you want to play one, I would suggest using an Arakora and modifying it. But remember, the Albari is extremely hated by most races, considering what they do. They basically imagine them as a cross between pirates that just annoy you to the point of insanity, and they aren't exactly a good race. As I said, second edition had a really weird thing with races back then, and species back then, whereas if something wasn't actively trying to murder you, and was just showing a lot of discord, or basically doing what it needs to survive, well, it seems that the Albari do need to create chaos in order to survive. That it basically occupies 99% of their time, except of maybe sleeping or eating or plotting their next bit of, well, chaos. So we've done that basically. They sometimes hide themselves as halflings or rock hoppers. Again, they'll isolate themselves in parts of ships. And they tend to eat anything, so anything's fair game. So you could have one as, like, for example, you could have like a mystery adventure where you have like an Albari and members of the crew are disappearing. You could do it like a bit like for example, based on the voyage that Dracula does, and he feeds off the crew members. The second part we're going to do is we're going to look at the Allura. We did look at them last time. Again, there were some mistakes. They are chaotic neutral. They tend to be reptilian in their true form. However, what they'll do is they'll disguise themselves as fair maidens. They'll have, like, be on broken down ships that they've taken over previously. They'll cry for help, send out distress signals. You know, people will come and rescue them. The whole thing starts over again, where they'll isolate members of the crew. If they can't brainwash them, they can't inflict them with mind controlled spells or illusions or whatever. What they'll do is they'll use force. It's a last resort for them, and they're not as scaredy cat as the Albari. What they'll do is they'll actually fight if need to. They have quite high level spells in 2nd edition, 12th level: Charm Person, Sleep, Friend, Suggestion, Demand, Clairaudience, Clairvoyance, Delude, and Mass Suggestion. They have the ability to detect live, so for example, this is a 500 meter thing. So they'll be able to see ships coming and they'll plot their, oh help us type thing. Once they have the ship basically under their control, they'll feed off the emotions, and once they're drained, they'll basically move on to new people. If they don't feed on emotions for 4 months, they'll start turning into their reptilian true form. Unfortunately, we don't have a picture of their reptilian true form, so go wild on your worst nightmarish creature if you want to play them. Again, I would suggest a doppelganger based race. Maybe the shifters from Eberron would be a good thing. They are another race that is despised by a lot of people simply because of what they do. They do need to feed on people. Again, this is another race that isn't truly evil because they're doing what they need to do to survive. And therefore, in 2nd edition, this was quite common. For example, it's not so bad as it was then. For example, they would equate them on like basically like animals, basically. And I'm not disparaging them in any sort of way or anything, because they're a sentient species. But if someone wasn't maliciously like trying to stab you in the middle of the night, they were just doing it because they needed to for food or whatever, they would call them neutral creatures. The last one we're going to look at is the air dragon. The air dragons are huge creatures. They are super geniuses, which means they've got intelligence scores of 19 to 20. And they're fearless. They're gigantic. 50 foot. They have 80% chance of resisting magic, so give them high magical saves. They look like shimmering diamonds. So, for example, if you look at the gem-based dragons, imagine a diamond-based gem dragon. Sometimes they'll be hard to see, and they'll basically stay still. They'll be basically like a diamond in midair. And it possesses wings, so it does look like a normal dragon, but from a distance you'll just see a shimmering diamond. Air dragons will tend to avoid combat. They don't want any part of they don't want any part of anything, basically. They just want to be left alone. However, if you're kind to them, if you're nice to them, they're not evil creatures. They're basically any lawful, so lawful, neutral, or lawful good they tend to be. So if you're stuck or something, maybe you'll get one to help them. It could be a good idea to use one as sort of an NPC who comes across in a ship. Maybe he wants to go to a different sphere world. You could do this and have him as an NPC. If you want to play a Dragonborn version, what I would do is I would just modify the Dragonborn race, and say his skins are very reflective. So again, lawful neutral or lawful good. They will fight when they have to. Being so gigantic in their true forms, ships are going to have a hard time fighting them. They are considered basically an extremely high XP worth character. So 20,000 is plus 1 per additional hit dice, and it gives it 20 hit dice as base. So you're going to roll 20 d20s for the amount of hit points it has. So they look after people and they look after individuals, and that's how they'll get food and nutrients. They have a symbiotic relationship with other things. The emotional thing that they can only feed on is affection, so therefore they need to help people. They need to be like this passive good guy type character, otherwise they'll basically starve to death. They tend to be extremely high level. So for example, you're going to get level 24 versions of them. You're going to get massively ancient versions of them. They tend to live extremely more than your normal dragon. So for example, I've got an example here of 5,600 to 6,000 years old as being the eldest. They tend to live in cohorts, so you might not get one air dragon, you'll get 5 or 3. They tend to hang out in packs, so if you wanted to use them as NPCs, maybe the one is going to visit his family in another realm space, so you could use it in like that. As I said, they tend to be extremely good. They need to feed off good emotions. So this is another creature that uses emotions as its feeding, or its food source rather. There we go. That's the 3 races, or 3 species rather, that we've done. I hope this fixes all the problems with the previous video. Thank you very much for commenting on the previous one with the issues that there was. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate it if you like and subscribe as well. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves, and bye bye.